Here's something crazy. Every single day, 120,000 tracks are uploaded to all the streaming services. If each of those tracks is 2.5 minutes long, that's about 208 days of music every single day getting uploaded. And it's predicted there'll be 43 million tracks uploaded this year. And if my math is correct, that comes out to over 200 years of music that will be released this year. That means if you started listening to all of this year's music non-stop, you'll still be listening in 2224. Isn't that crazy? So how are you gonna get your music heard? It's not by trying to sound like your favorite artists. It's gonna be by sounding like you, by developing your own sonic identity. I want to show you a couple cool techniques you can use in Ableton Live 12 that will help you develop your own musical voice. I'm going to show you how to make a playable instrument with your voice, and you can download the one I made for free. Think of how good you are at recognizing other people's voices. Every one of us has a unique sound to our own voice. What better thing to use to make our own musical sound than our own voice? And you don't even have to be a singer. So I've got a blank session in Ableton Live 12. I'm going to rename this track by pressing Command R and call it Voice. And we'll record some voice samples. Hold on. Hello? All right. I've got a very special microphone. This is a telephone mic I made by just opening this up and soldering a microphone cable to it. It was a pretty simple project, took maybe an hour or two. I have no soldering experience whatsoever, just followed along on a YouTube video, and now I've got a really cool mic with some character that we can use for sampling my voice. So not only are we using my voice, we're going to use a special sounding mic. So I'm going to select this mic. I've got it here, telephone, instrument. You can rename your inputs on your audio interface. This is a huge time saver. Just click on configuration, and then you can name all of these inputs on your audio interface, whatever you like. And you can see I've got some named already. And this saves me time when I'm trying to record and keep the motivation and the flow going. I'm not figuring out what's plugged into each channel on my interface. It's all there. And it all shows up when I select tracks on my audio from. So we got the telephone mic, and let's hear what it sounds like. Hello, and thanks for watching this video. Very much like an old telephone. It's got a lot of character, and I'm going to use this to record my voice. I'm not worried about getting this perfect. I can tune these vocals later. I'm just going to get some vowel sounds at some different octaves. A, E, I, O, U. A, E, I, O, U. And what I love about this is these all have this nice character as if they came off a telephone call. And it's my voice too, unlike anyone else's, for better or for worse. I'm going to press Command F and start writing sampler and open up an instance of Ableton Live Sampler. And I'm going to drop this voice sample right in here. Now when I play a pad on push, the sample plays back. And at different pitches, we can move our start flag to get it to start right at the beginning of the sample. And depending on which samples we select, we get different vowels. So let's start with the first one. I'm going to get it right to the beginning there. I'm going to drag the end flag over to here. And I'm going to turn on the loop mode, and I'm going to do this back and forth looping. Now when I play the sample, it loops back and forth and sustains it. We can put a crossfade on here to smooth some of those, smooth that out a little bit. Now I'm going to duplicate this and do the same thing for the next sample. And this can be a little bit tedious, so I'm going to speed ahead and show you what it looks like once I'm done. Okay, I've duplicated this sample to get every single one of those vowels in there, and this is what it sounds like. And we'll tune that a little bit, but first I'm just going to rename these samples so I know what they are. And we can do that with Command R, and I'll just write A1, Command R, E1. Now we know what each of these samples are. Next, I'm going to have to tune these samples. So I'm going to do Command F to open my browser and search for the tuner. There it is, down arrow, hit enter, and the tuner's now in my project. And one by one, I'm going to check each one of these. So I'm playing this C because it's registering the best on the tuner, and I can see I'm getting an E. So I'm going to change this to E3, and now I've got a C there, and then I'm going to detune this with this control until I'm getting right about on that C. So it's okay if it moves around a little bit, that's close enough. And we're going to do this for each one of these samples. Let's hear how these sound. So we're hearing 10 samples at once now. But what if we had it set up so that every single time I play a note, a different sample sounds? That might keep this instrument from sounding too boring. So we're going to use the round robin function here. And this means a new sample will be played every time I play a note. So right now we're just going forward through our sounds. But we could go backwards. We can go other, which is just a different one every time. Or we can do random, which can repeat the same one over and over again. And we can have this reset at different musical intervals. For example, every single bar it will reset at the first sample. But I'm going to keep it at none because I want this to be totally random. You'll never get the same thing twice. I'm going to make a few adjustments so that this plays back more evenly. First, I'm going to select all of these and crop these into their own individual samples. So now each one is its own sample. And then I'm going to right-click and normalize the volume so that they all play back at the same volume, more or less. Okay, so we got a fun sounding instrument, but let's take it to another level. We're going to right-click to group this to an instrument rack. I'm going to reveal the macro controls, and now we can start mapping some controls that will be useful for us that we might want to play around with. I like to be able to control the shape of the volume, so I'm going to use the amplitude envelope, and by right-clicking the attack and selecting macro 1, and then the decay macro 2, sustain macro 3, I can now have control over these macros from my controller. So maybe we'll give this a nice fade in and a fade out. It's got a nice sound to it. Let's map the filter as well. We're going to right click that and get the filter and the resonance. We're starting to get an interesting sound here. The filter envelope can sculpt the sound over time. I'm going to right click the amount and put that to 7, and the decay and put that to 8. And I can turn up the filter envelope and the decay value a bit, and you're going to hear the filter move over time. It's closing over time. And if I move it into the negative regions, it's going to open up now. And we could sculpt different sounds. Maybe we have a fast attack and no sustain, and we'll get more of a pluck. I think this could be a fun time to bring in the new roar device as an effect. We can drop that right inside of our instrument rack, so this is part of the rack. I'm going to hot swap this and choose a preset. Let's try Circuit Bent Toy. We can bring the dry wet down a bit. And that gives us kind of a fun sound. All right, I like this keys memory preset. I'm gonna right click the dry wet and map that to macro 9. We can show more macros by pressing these plus buttons. I'm also gonna map the tone because that makes quite a big difference on the sounds as well. So the dry wet just allows us to combine the processed and unprocessed signal. Roar has a really interesting feedback mode, and I'm going to start dialing this up. And you hear we've got a delay now. I'll open the filter width here. So let's macro map the feedback amount. This really starts becoming a delay. There's some great updates to the Arpeggiator in Live 12. We're going to bring that in. And we can set it to be scale aware so that all of our notes will always be within our key. Right now our key is set to C major. Let's see what that sounds like. Pretty cool. It's always in key and it's always going to fit our music. I'll set up a couple controls for the arpeggiator. I'm going to right click the rate, set that to number 12. I'm going to also set the distance and the steps. So this will give us some control over how much we can move our arpeggiator. And we might not want it on all the time. So I'm also going to map the power button. We'll do this on the rate. And then we can go inside our mapping area. And if we look at the rate, device on is only going to turn on when the knob reaches halfway. Let's set that to 1 so that as soon as I turn the knob, we start getting arpeggiation. And I'm also going to reverse the orientation of the sync rate. I think it makes more sense for it to get faster as you turn it up, not slower. So we're just going to invert the range there. So now as I turn that all the way down, we get no arpeggiation at all. And then as I start turning it up, it turns on the arpeggiator and gives us some fun arpeggiations. Let's go in the MIDI tab and use Slide to control the filter frequency just a little bit so that when we move our finger up and down the pad, we can get a little bit of different filter action going on. I'm going to turn it up very high so you can hear it. So there's a lot of filter noise happening. But we're going to make that a little more subtle. This gives us a little more expression in our playing. Since we have 2 macros left over, I'm going to bring in the hybrid reverb and put that at the end here. And I'm going to set it to the algorithm, and we're going to pick tides. I'm going to have to map the dry wet to macro 15. And maybe the size to 16. So we can control the reverb and also get these kind of cool pitching sounds too we can use for effects if we want. And we've built a pretty cool sounding instrument. A lot of character and personality, and this is my voice through my telephone microphone, and it's unlike anything else anyone else would come up with, and I'm sure if you've been following along, you're getting your own sounds out of this. I want to clean up this instrument rack by renaming the macros, and that's with Command-R to rename anything in Live, and I can write attack, and then I can just tab over to the next macro. I'll do this real quick. We can color these by right-clicking and choosing a color. And I like to keep related parameters the same color. So this amplitude envelope will be blue. Maybe our filter will be a darker blue. Roar seems kind of red. Arp will be yellow. Reverb will be a purplish. Now I can minimize this. I can press Command R to rename this. I'm going to call it BF Telephone Voice and save it to my library. BF Telephone Voice. In the new live browser, we can tag our presets, and we can even create our own tags. There's one tag called Creator, and I want to make one for myself. So I'm going to click Edit, and then under Creator, I'm going to go scroll down to where it says Add Tag. I'm going to write my name, Brian Funk. And now we've got a new tag called Brian Funk, and I can select my telephone voice and tag it Brian Funk. So now when I select this tag, I get my telephone voice. Now I've been in the habit of naming all of my presets with the prefix BF so that when I press search in BF and I go under instruments, everything that I have labeled BF shows up here. I'm going to select all of these and give them the tag Brian Funk. And now when I go looking for my instruments, I can select Brian Funk and all of my instruments show up right here. So this is a great way to keep track of your own presets. Let's take a look at the Chord device. Chord is now also scale aware, so we can add notes to any single note we play to create chords. When we turn on scale awareness, now we're moving in scale degrees. So I'm just going to make a new chord, just kind of at random. That sounds nice. We've got a strum, so that all of these notes don't play at the same time. We kind of strum like a chord. We can build some tension in that strum and even crescendo it with the velocity. Do that. And let's get a beat going. I'm going to go to my go-to beats and grab a MIDI beat, a 4 to the floor, maybe with some hats. That should be cool. And I'm just going to play this, and we will try to record something in here. That should do it. Cool. Every time this plays back, it's going to be slightly different because different samples are being selected thanks to the round-robin sampling in Sampler. I'm going to put a glue compressor on this just to kind of bring the sounds together a bit. Nice. And now I'm going to convert this to audio. But before I do that, let's just keep the MIDI track inside of our current project folder. You can drag any track into your browser and live, and it will get saved there. If I ever want it back, I can just drag this over here, and there it is, just the way it was. But I'm going to freeze and flatten this track. So all of these sounds, this instrument, and any effects are being printed to audio. So now I have some audio right here. And this will play back the same way every time because those samples have now been committed to this audio file. Let's bring in one of the new updates from Live 12, Granulator 3. This is a granular sampler. So now we can take the sampled telephone voice in those chords we built and drop it into Granulator. And let's hear what we get now. There's a few different modes here. Right now we're in classic mode. And we can play around with the way these samples get played back. And the pitches, where they start from, how they get looped. Even introduce some variation. And we can filter everything too if we like. So we got something completely new now. We got control over our envelope too if we want to maybe make this sound more like a pad. A little fade in. I kind of like the sound of that right now. Let me try one of the different modes. This is loop. Play with the grain size and scan around. And finally there's cloud. creates a cloud of sound. I'm gonna go back to the original. It's a classic. I'm gonna play this beat and just record something in. Let's go with that. Let's put a little roar on this and see what we can come up with. Lo-fi sampler, what's that sound like? VHS mild. Maybe we can also spice up our drums here with some roar. There's some drum presets here. One was called Made for 808s. And that's what we've got as an 808. We could even go to our drum bus, maybe even before this. And we know we're in the key of C, so let's tune this to something that fits like a G. And if we like, we can bring back our original instrument. Maybe we could play something interesting with the Arpeggiator. Pretty strange. And we're just kind of getting started scratching the surface here, but I think you can see we can have quite a lot of fun by creating stuff with our own voice to create our own voice musically. These are sounds no one else has, through a microphone no one else has, and if you've been following along, you've got your own sounds too that is making music that's your own style. If you like the telephone voice I made, it'll be available for free download on my site, brianfunk.com. I hope you enjoyed the video. My name is Brian Funk. I'm an Ableton certified trainer and host of the Music Production Podcast, where we talk about all things related to making music. Check it out wherever you get your podcasts. Thanks a lot and have a great day.